Alrighty, guys. I think I got everything recording correctly here. This is going to be a slightly longer video. Basically, I'm going over everything that's required in the IMRADR assignment, looking at an example the whole way and analyzing it and showing you guys the things that I've noticed, just so you guys have a sense of like what I'm looking for when I'm grading and how kind of strict I am and just the different things that you might have missed in the previous PDFs and videos that I've made. So yeah, so we're going to go through the full IMRAD here. Be advised that there are a lot of sources and access to information that you guys have. We've read the Scientist's Guide to Writing. We've obviously had my lectures over the last 7 weeks, 6 weeks, 7, yeah. We have chapter 18 of technical communication. Chapter, I think 19 goes over the IMRAD method as well, though we didn't read that one. And then we've obviously read other chapters on graphics and research and audience and purpose and all of that. We have a whole bunch of PDFs on Moodle. I'll show some of those to you guys here. But remember that our PDFs online and that the texts we've read online, some of them are going to talk about the IMRAD. Some of them are going to talk about the recommendation report. And then some of the things that I've created are about our specific assignment, right? So we are not necessarily doing a traditional IMRAD report. We're modifying it slightly. And so be advised when you're looking at things, for example, like our document that's called the IMRAD Report Essentials. This is a great document for writing the IMRAD report, right? This might not have all of the information for your IMRAD-R assignment due in our class. Does that make sense? I think you guys understand that concept. I just wanted to make it clear. But we have our MIT guide on the IMRAD. We have a Stanford guide. We have the Essentials guide that I created here. We have the IMRAD-R process requirements and the IMRAD-R assignment guidelines as well as the general content information. And then we have the very specific to our assignment rubric that you should definitely look through, okay? Obviously, we've looked at some examples over the last few weeks. I've dived in and shown you guys examples in these videos. And we have a couple of other examples here as well. And the rubric, as I said. So the way it's broken up is it's broken up into 40% content, and then the other sections are all 20% each: organization, formatting, language, and grammar, okay? I highly recommend scanning through this, but essentially for content, we're looking at everything from the title to the front matter to the back matter to each section of the report, and then making sure you're following the conventions of each section. So even though in here it doesn't say the introduction should have these 6 sections, we know based off of the research, the information that I've given you, the examples that we've looked at, the multiple readings that we've done, that these are the requirements of each section, right? Obviously, we're using the problem-solving model, and you have to have a lot of logical, argumentative flow in your report. That the content and recommendations are heavily supported by both primary and secondary research, and that your sources are put into conversation with each other throughout the report, right? That they're sophistical, logical, and so we're looking for this strong methodology there. Organization, just making sure that not only are paragraphs organized, but that each section is properly organized, and that the whole thing is organized, okay? So that things are in the correct locations. The decision matrix itself is in the results section, that there's a data analysis section, and that stuff is explained in the methods, right? And that the analysis of the decision matrix is in the discussion, not anywhere else. Things like that. Formatting is looking a lot at APA style and IEEE, but also your graphics, making sure that they're designed well, and then other creative choices that you're allowed to make outside of your formatting style. Okay, we're looking at that for formatting. And so this assignment is worth 25% of your grade. So if you got a really bad grade on formatting, let's say you lost half the points, that's 2.5% of your entire grade in your in our full class, right? And so I'm saying that just to let you guys know that even though you have these things like formatting and grammar and these other things that you might not care about as much, like organization, they still make up a large portion of your grade. So make sure you're putting some time into those. Content is obviously the most important thing, but we also have these other things that we can lose points on, right? If you do really well with language and grammar, formatting, and organization, and don't do as good on content, you can still get a B on the assignment, right? Just because you've done really well with the other things. So just be advised about that, okay? Language and grammar, here, as I've mentioned before, we are looking at more specific things than you would look at WCS 150. With 150, it was just, looking at proper use of grammar and language. Here, we're not looking at only proper use, but we're actually looking at stylistics of technical writing. So you can have a sentence that's written 100% correctly, but you could still lose points in the language and grammar section because it's not clear or it's not concise, or you've used one of these common issues that we've seen from our chapter on technical writing stylistics. If you haven't read that chapter, you might want to skim through it. Okay, so these are all the different parts that you're being graded on here. Okay, and just know that this is a difficult assignment. It is very complicated. It took half the semester to do. We put 7 weeks of research, and I can't remember the exact amount. I think it's 12 hours. It's either 15 or 12 hours a week you're supposed to put into working on this class. And so I expect to see those 12 to 15 hours over 7 weeks, 70 hours put into this. And so I expect to see 70 hours of writing, of research, of reading, of secondary sources, of primary research, of focusing on not only the content and making sure that all the sections have all the right components, and that your problem and solution is clear, and that the decision matrix is clear, but also looking at the very minute details of sentence by sentence, making sure the language is clear and concise and effective, and that you're not being too comprehensive, you're not being too concise, you're finding the right middle ground there. Okay. So I do grade this pretty critically, but I don't grade it harsher than what's not written here. Like, I follow the rubric. Okay, so read the rubric. I'm not going to stray from the rubric, but just know that it's complicated and it's difficult because there's so many different things, right? You could put a lot of time into primary research, but maybe you didn't put as much into secondary. You could put more time into the secondary, but not as much into the primary, whatever. Like, so you could put a lot of time into certain parts, but because you didn't put enough time into the whole thing, there could be problems. So just make sure you're aware of this. I've been talking about it for many weeks, right? The assignment is due this weekend. You guys should know these things. So let's just dive into the example at this point. All right. So this is an example here. We're going to go through it. I'm going to show you guys all of the things that I noticed and possibly talk about a general grade that I would maybe give it. This isn't a fully completed report. It's mostly completed, but it is a draft. Okay, so this isn't a report that has been submitted yet. This is something that I got by the approval of the 2 students that are working on this project, but I have removed their names. Okay, don't try to find out who they are. This is just they were gracious enough to let me use their report as an example here. Okay. So your title is graded. It shouldn't be a research question. It shouldn't be a question at all. Should definitely not be a research question. Shouldn't be a question at all. Oftentimes we like the use of a colon, but you don't have to use a colon. Okay. But we want it to be creative. We want it to be engaging. We want it to be interesting. We want it to be able to tell us some information about what the report is or what it's going to do. Here it says COVID-19 challenge of Nazarbayev University students, digital inequality. It's creative, but I don't think it's super clear, and I think it could be more effective, and I think it could be more directly related to their actual problem, which is a little bit less about COVID-19 and a little bit more about digital inequality. Not saying we can't have the word COVID-19 here, but it just doesn't quite, I feel like it doesn't quite explain. I think they're using the colon a little bit grammatically incorrect here. Okay, so they're using APA style here. So I'm going to be talking about APA style, but if you're using IEEE, just reference the information from IEEE. I don't know all of the rules for APA. I don't know of all of the rules for IEEE. And so just know where to access that information on our Moodle. But they're using the 7th edition student version here. And so it should look like this as the first page. For your reference, just a reminder, front matter and back matter, what's required? I need a title page and an abstract, okay? I don't need any of the other front matter. You're welcome to include certain things, like if you want to include a table of contents because your report is pretty long and you want to make it more user-friendly, you can. If you want to include a list of illustrations and things like that, you can as well. But the only requirement is a title page and the abstract as the front matter, okay? If you're using APA, you can do your title page like this, or you can do it as it's shown in our textbook. Let's look at that really quick, okay? And I'm actually going to require those using IEEE to do it like they do in our textbook as well here, okay? So I'll show you real quick. Like this here, all right? So this is a good title page for those of you using IEEE. Use this format, all right? We don't necessarily need this, but if you want to come up with something like that, you could. But we need this part right here for sure, okay? This is where you're going to write who it's prepared for, and it's not going to be me, okay? If you're doing APA style, you're welcome to use this format as well, or you can use the normal format for APA style. IEEE doesn't have a title page citation method or style, and so that's why I'm asking people using IEEE to use this format. For APA, you can use either this format or the standard APA format. Either one works for me, but then we'll go to the abstract and then the introduction. And then with all of that, just follow the citation style. So for example, with IEEE, the abstract is on the same page as everything else, whereas with APA style, our abstract is set apart like this, right? Okay, so let's continue on here. Am I sharing my screen? I am. Okay. So correct formatting. It's a little bit short. I think it needs to be 250 to 150 to 250 words. I think it's like 123 or something like that. Did it tell me? No? Oh yeah, there we go. 123. Oh, look at that. I was right. So this section has the right parts. It has most of the right parts. Okay. So with an abstract, we want to have those 5 or 6 major sections from the signal phrases template that I've shown you guys on our Moodle. Okay. I'll show you guys again in a moment here. But the thing that they're missing is the introduction part or the background part. They go right into what they're investigating here. And they say they're investigating this. And so it's based off of the research question. And I just wanted to let them know that we want it written as a question somewhere in the report. It doesn't have to be written as a question right here, but it could be written here or in the introduction, possibly in the discussion section, most likely in the abstract during the introduction, is where we're going to see the research question written as a question. It doesn't have to be written as a question everywhere, but right here, it sounds like the question, right? The effect of digital inequality on the academic performance of various students during distance learning and the ways to minimize such effect. But it has 2 things here, which I know a proper research question is not double-barreled, okay? And so there's some problems there. I don't know, is the research question this part or that part? Or is it both and it's not a good research question, okay? So we've got our method here. That's good. It was found. So this is what we discovered, right? And then therefore our recommendation is this. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So that is all mostly good there. I'm a little bit confused about the question, and then we don't have like the sentences on like the background information or maybe the gap. Okay, so we might be missing a sentence on the gap. We might be missing a sentence on like the background information that could help bulk it up a little bit, but otherwise it's okay. All right, I would say it's mostly successful. Our introduction is going to do similar things that the abstract does, just in more detail, okay, with secondary sources cited and a lot more information on the background part. The introduction is where you let us know terms if we need to know to define terms. You're also going to introduce enough background information that's rhetorically effective. So this will be different for each paper. You might only need a paragraph. You might need 2 paragraphs or even 3 paragraphs. Most of you probably only need 1, maybe 2 paragraphs to set up the background information and to get us to understand that there is a problem. By the time I'm done reading the introduction, I'm going to just have a lot more details about everything that was already in your abstract. And I'm also going to realize that this is in fact a problem. Okay. And so in some ways, you're going to think of it as a longer abstract or as kind of like an abstract, but a lot more detail in the introductory part, and then a little bit more detail in other parts. Okay. I've read through this. So you guys are aware, the students here seem to be researching the challenges of digital inequality among NU students during this semester. Okay. Um, and here they bring up this idea, that, COVID has considerably changed the way we live, and, NU is no different, and distance learning poses some challenges. Some good information, and I think maybe necessary, but it could be a lot shorter. I think we could write this in just fewer sentences. What we want to get to really quickly is to prove that digital inequality among students is in fact a problem and connect it to NU. Okay, that's what we need to show in the introduction here in the first couple paragraphs. The problem is they don't do that. Okay. They explain what digital inequality is in the context of education, which is great. All right. We need these type of definitions. So the term digital inequality implies the unfair distribution of possibilities of students to access information, devices, internet. And so we have that definition. Then they say unfavorable socioeconomic and geographical status usually causes such inequality among students to privileging those learners who are unable to access. All right, so this is the why, okay? And so we have all this background information right here. And before we even understand fully that digital inequality is in fact a thing that exists among students, we're already being told like the why and not the what, right? I mean, we have a definition, but now we need more evidence to show that this is in fact a problem, right? We understand what digital inequality is now and how it applies to students, but now show us that it's a problem. Prove to us through secondary research that it is a problem. Bring in the evidence, bring in the evidence, bring in the case study, the research. Now, do you have to spend pages talking about that? No, we only need a good paragraph of information with secondary sources cited. And I think a lot of your reports are going to be obvious that the problem exists, right? If you're studying about violence against women, it's like, well, yeah, that's a problem. If you're studying about digital inequality, well, yeah, that's a problem. But we just need it cited with secondary research with specific details that let us know, like, oh, yeah, that is a problem. When all we get is this thing about like COVID is bad, and like this is what this term means, and it's because of social economic inequality, but then we don't really discover exactly what this is. Like, what is it specifically? Like show us like how this is. I'm not getting this real sense of clarity that they understand. And one of the things that I very, very much expect in technical writing is really clear, concise sentences that really let me understand what this means. That doesn't mean you can't have complicated sentences or ideas that take, a couple sentences to develop. It's okay to have complicated concepts like that. But I think most of the time we can write things in more clear and concise ways. Okay. But the main problem here is just that we basically start to go into the other parts of the introduction before we actually get the background information. And then the background information actually seems to show up right here which is partly based off of their secondary research. But your problem should be a problem within the, sorry, it's partly based off their primary research, but the problem should be based off of secondary research as well. Absolutely. Okay. If it's not based off secondary research, then you have a massive problem and you need to email me. Okay. Introduction is just too long as well. We don't need quite that much information. Remember, we're using these signal phrases like we hypothesize. That's nice. Okay. So that's from that document that I told you guys about. Good. You know, same with this one. To test this hypothesis we've conducted. All right, great. That lets us know that this is the methods or the experimental approach. So the student does do a good job occasionally at using those signal phrases that let us know what we're about to talk about. But just be careful, because I'm often looking at every single word. Like, I really analyze this, okay? And if there's confusing wording, then you're going to lose points on the language and grammar. If the wording is so confusing that I don't understand the content, you'll lose points on content, okay? So just make sure that you're writing clearly, concisely, that you're following those formatting guidelines, those kind of 5 to 6 major points, starting with the background, to the gap, to the question, to your methodology, to your results, briefly, right? Very briefly mentioning the results. And we have some good information here, but just too much information, all right? And so, yeah, we just need to consolidate information there. Okay, let's jump on to the methods. By the way, when you're doing APA style, everything's single-spaced, or double-spaced, sorry. Everything's double-spaced without any space between sections. You do need the abstract on its own page, and you do need the references on their own page. Okay, maybe the appendix on its own page as well, at the start of a page. The start of a page, I mean. But the introduction, methods, results, discussion, those can all happen right next to each other, just like this. The APA style 7th edition student version sample will tell you not to include the word introduction here, and instead just have the title. Because we are doing an IMRAD report, that stands for Introduction, Methods, Results, Discussion, I am going to ask you to include the introduction. I'll probably be okay if it's centered or left aligned, but technically, I believe, based off of my analysis of the sample APA paper, that the introduction, methods, results will be primary subheadings, okay, much like the title. These are primary subheadings, okay? And then you'll have the secondary over here and third and fourth, okay? So use those appropriately. So like, this is the first layer, this is the second done properly, this is the third done properly, the fourth will be in the actual text of the paragraph, okay? So our subheadings are good here. Actually, this one seems unnecessary. I'm not really sure. It seems wordy, the main primary research. It's not capitalized properly as well. And I'm not sure it's necessary, okay? Okay. Since this paper studies the relationship between digital inequality and the academic performance of any students, that is summarized information from previous areas. It's okay if we get that information occasionally in each section. You just want to be careful not to overdo it, because we're trying to be concise and clear, but it is helpful and sometimes necessary for organization, right? Make sure you're using past tense and passive voice like they are here, okay? As long as it doesn't confuse the content, all right? We still need to understand the content. There's a weird hyperlink right here. I'm not sure why. Okay, there's a hyperlink there. Let's see. So here, it's a little bit confusing. We have two reasons for this survey existing, and I'm just not sure. One of the challenges that I've gleaned as I was reading into this and as I got through the methods is I actually wasn't sure I knew 100% what the students were doing. And I know that some of these things have been confusing for those of you who are new, but just remember that the most important thing we're doing is finding solutions to our problem. That is the most important thing we're doing here. We're finding solutions to our problem, okay? Research questions, sections, everything else is less important than that. The very most important thing is finding solutions. And I need to understand very well what your problem is, like very well and very clear, and make sure that it's not confusing at all, okay? And I need to know very clearly that you're looking for solutions, okay? And as I was reading through this, I got the sense that they cared more about their research question, which their research question was, let me show you guys. From what I understand, is their research question is looking at the effect of digital inequality on the academic performance of Nazarbayev University students during distance learning in fall 2020. And so it's looking at the problem, okay, not at the solution. And as a research question, that's okay. I mentioned before that the research question can be about the problem, about the solutions, about criteria. It's really, anything that interests you or that you have a hypothesis about. But regardless of that, our main purpose is finding solutions, okay? So if you have a research question that's different from finding solutions, then make sure you are very clear in stating that you're doing both of those things, that you're answering your research question, and you are also, and even more important, finding solutions. More important than the research question is finding solutions. Maybe the answer to your research question are the solutions, in which case you've made it easier for yourself, okay? And so you can just say, like, I'm answering this question in order to find solutions, right? By the time I got to the methods here, I was like, wait, what are we actually doing here? And the students wrote, this paper studying the relationship between digital media and the academic performance of NU students. Digital inequality, sorry. Okay, I'm going to come back to that idea as we go through further here, and it'll make more sense as we go through further, okay? Here we have some information about the types of questions. It's a whole paragraph about types of questions. I think it's okay, but it could be more concise, all right? We don't need quite that much information. For example, we should already know what demographic questions are here. So you say, we're doing demographic questions such as these. I don't need that much detail, okay? If I want to know what type of questions you asked, I'll look at the appendix. And so you can still have this paragraph where you explain, but it doesn't need to be so detailed, okay? Ethical considerations looks good here because their research doesn't necessarily dive into talking to people about their trauma, or like mental health. This section is okay to be this short. If you have a sensitive subject, you might need to add a sentence or 2 or 3 here, okay? But for most of us, it won't be too long just because we're doing student research. All right, so we have some awkward phrasing. Certain things I might not understand, right? Only in the analysis part of the work. I don't know what that means, all right? And so I need to really, so let's look at it. Every participant of the conducted survey was informed about the purpose of this research and that the results will be used only in the analysis part of the work. I don't know what that means, that the results will only be used in the analysis part, because I think they talked about it in other parts too, right? Like they talked about it in the methods. They mentioned it briefly in the abstract. Like it's fundamental to our whole research paper, right? The survey was absolutely anonymous and voluntary, allowing to avoid any possible. Super awkward, right? Like we want it to be very clear and concise. And I know that this is a draft, and so I'm not going to worry too much about awkward phrasing in a draft. But I'm treating this as if it was the final. Okay. This section is a really poorly created section. Okay, the data analysis section. So the data analysis section is required. It doesn't need to be called data analysis, but it's a good title to give it. I've required you to mention the problem-solving method, as well as triangulation, as well as the decision matrix, okay? And they have some issues here, technical communication. This is not correct according to APA style. There's a problem with language there. To navigate among the possible solutions. awkward or wordy, and we don't know what solutions you're talking about. The problem-solving model is used in the discussion part of the paper. No, it's the method of the full research, right? Remember that when you're citing, you should cite directly next to whatever the information is. And so they've done that correctly here, Markel 2015. Okay. Don't just put it at the end of the paragraph, though. Make sure you put it where it belongs according to the citation style. I don't know what this means. Let's see. The comparison of the options is done by using a decision matrix, a table that helps and its importance weights. This part is just awkward phrasing or language issue, importance weights. I don't know what that means. Another APA style issue. They explained this wrong. It's not, I just wrote wrong. Okay, this is just, it's not right. And so if you try to explain something like the triangulation of data and you say it incorrectly, then it's just content-wise, you'll lose points, okay? Triangulation doesn't guarantee, okay? Definitely doesn't guarantee. Use your hedging intelligently there. Right here, this first half, we have some good general information about the decision matrix, which I asked you to include. Then from here, we go into their specific decision matrix, suddenly in the middle of a paragraph, okay? So it actually confused me as far as content and organization. It might lose points because I didn't understand the content because of it, but also the organization was messed up. I'm not exactly sure how it dock points on that. And just phrases like this, it is intuitively clear, or like guaranteed. These are phrases that I hear the student using because they think that it'll make me be like, oh yeah, guaranteed, or like, it's intuitively clear. Yeah, good job. But actually I'm like, well, wait, is it intuitively clear? Because if it was intuitively clear, why did you have to say it? Right? Like, it is intuitively clear that solving the problem of the digital divide should have a minimum of harm, right? You're basically saying that it's clear that the solution shouldn't harm someone. And I say, well, if it's so clear, why did you mention it? And why did we mention it in this paragraph where we were talking about general information? It's very weird. This is the section where I expect you to tell me every specific criteria you're using in your own decision matrix, every option you're using in your specific decision matrix, every weight you've given each one in your specific decision matrix, and secondary sources used to cite all of that, or most of it, not all of it. Okay, it doesn't have to. Some of it can be logical, some of it can be based off of primary research. But even if it's based off of primary research, I still expect to see a multiplicity of secondary sources cited in these paragraphs and engaged in conversation with each other. Okay, so effective use of a multiplicity of sources here. All right. And I just found a lot of confusing information here. Let's see. I think that they could have used fourth level headings. This is a third level heading. They could have used fourth level headings to like break it up into even further sections if that would be helpful for them. This definition of inequality is out of place. And it's wordy here. I see that they're trying to use this secondary source to show that inclusiveness criteria is good. And it's just too wordy and not necessarily directly working. We have a new paragraph here, like this paragraph ended and we have this new paragraph and we don't necessarily know what's happening. Okay. And so just overall organization is really poor here. Although we admit that socioeconomic factors are a predominant cause of digital inequality, the criteria cannot require solutions to completely solve social inequality itself at the national level, right? Just because it's student research. I think that is important to say if you have something like that. Another example that I discovered this semester was some students were researching child suicide, and they discovered that one of the big issues is violence among children. Like that leads to suicide. And they felt as students that they weren't necessarily equipped to handle child violence, like parental violence against children, right? And so that's something that they're going to mention in their future research prospects, and possibly elsewhere in their report, just to show that, like, yeah, we didn't ignore this thing, but we just realized that that's out of our scope, right, as student researchers. And so it's okay to say something like this. I'm not sure it really fits just because the overall organization in this whole section is confusing. Let's see. Yeah, so that's okay. By the way, ICT just started to be used randomly, and I had no idea what that meant. I had to Google it to look it up, figure out what that meant. All right. The options that we study are suggestions given by respondents and we authors. That seems unnecessary. Like, I don't understand why they are saying that. If they're trying to say we didn't use secondary sources, that's not allowed. Just plain up not allowed, okay? And I heard that a lot throughout this report, is they were saying things kind of like this. And in my perspective, it sounded like they were saying it in order to pacify me, in order for them to think that I would say, oh, okay, they don't have to use secondary research then, which is like, no, like, I expect a lot of secondary, effective, really good secondary research in this thing, okay? And I don't think I'm being overly, like I don't think I'm requiring too much there, like out of 7 weeks of research, right? Again, if we're to put 10 hours of work in over 7 weeks, like, finding a handful or a dozen or 2 dozen good sources, like, I don't think it's too hard. All right. The requirement is 5, but most students, I'm noticing, you have more than that. Not all of the suggestions were considered in the matrix due to academic integrity and price principles. I don't know what that really means. And I understand this example, but again, it sounds a little bit like you're saying we based all of our solutions off of primary research, which is just straight up not allowed at all, okay? You can base it off of your primary research, but we're doing triangulation of data, right? Which means we are also like using secondary research throughout the whole report, okay? The whole report. All right, let's see. And so this is where I encountered the same problem of not being fully sure what it is we're researching. Because I started to encounter this issue of correlation versus causation, which we'll talk about in a second. But essentially, I wasn't sure if what you're researching is technical problems or just the fact that students aren't as good at online education when they haven't been trained for it when it happens during a pandemic, right? Like, most of our students are going to be struggling in different ways. And I didn't see or read anything about that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more once we get to the results, okay? But there was that problem. Here, they wrote, assessing and giving points relative to a maximum of 10 points were made on the basis of secondary sources and respondents' answers in the survey. In total, there were 5 criteria in the decision matrix. The weights are negligible because it cannot be stated that one of the criteria are more important than the other. So it can be stated that, right? So that's not true. It could be. Someone could state that, but it's just way too vague, right? Like, this should be replaced with a page of information. Like, all of this, should be reorganized into, like, effective information there. Essentially, by the time I'm done with your methods, I should understand very clearly your decision matrix, even though I don't know the solutions yet. In the results section, I'll discover what I'll look at your actual decision matrix and discover your solutions. Okay. We don't need this empty space right here. We can start the results right after the methods. Okay, so we don't need that empty space. I deleted a bunch of things right here, as you can see, according to the statistics, and the unnecessary unnecessary the. And then we have some wordiness here. All of the participants are in the age group of 18 to 24 and live in Almaty, Aktel, and Aturai, or whatever, right? That's it. This is a little bit complicated. None of the participants live in a village. because the word village in English is really complicated, because we don't really use that word much. And I think the way that you guys use it in English is the way that we would use town or city. Like, we don't necessarily differentiate as much as you guys between like cities, towns, villages. Like, we kind of just call them all cities, sort of. I think it's, if you purposefully made sure to not to get anyone from a village, then you could say that. But I don't know why you told me that. And if you have the 3 cities, then it's just unnecessarily wordy. Just say those 3 cities. In terms of the usage of the internet and gadgets, students experience an overall considerable change. You're using italics here incorrectly for APA style, okay? Don't use it to emphasize words. Use it as APA style asks you to, okay? In terms such as like for a book, you should italicize the title of a book, right? The terms of the usage of the, okay. It's a little wordy, but all right. Most of the students were satisfied with their internet connection. Seems like it could be a problem, because like if they're mostly satisfied, then is there an issue? Okay. And this is something that might need to be addressed in the discussion. Now, as far as I understand, as I've continued to read on, digital inequality affects maybe a smaller portion, like a minority of the students, which is okay, because it's still important and we still need to help those people, right? But we just need to be aware that this isn't countering your claims, okay? They have this, the students here have this weird thing of saying 3/5, 4/5, 5/5, 1/5 instead of percentages. I'm not sure why they're making their reader do the math. Just tell us the percentage. The figures, they called this one figure 1, but then later they have another figure 1 in their appendix. We shouldn't have more than one figure 1, okay? Whatever's a figure should be a figure, I believe, unless it said table. But I think there was another figure 1. Okay, so make sure that there's only one figure 1. And then satisfaction on education quality of students with unstable internet connection. This is where I wasn't sure what question they had asked here. What question did they ask the students? And I tried to look it up in the back. I couldn't find it. Quality of education has risen after transition into online learning. Is this like a agree or disagree type of thing? Agree or disagree with the statement? What options did they have? Just no and I don't know? Did they have multiple options? Like, it's kind of confusing, because then I also wondered, how did we know that these students had unstable internet connection? Was it just the students that had unstable internet connection that we're looking at here more specifically? So we've like separated the students that had good internet, and now we're just focusing on the ones that didn't. And how do we know that the fact that they got lower scores in school is because of, and this is the big question, how do we know that the fact that they got lower scores in school, in university, is because of their computers and devices and not because online education is harder, right? Because we're not trying to solve the fact that online education is hard. That is not what we should be doing here at all, okay? Not at all. Again, I focus very intensely on the problem and solution. And so if the problem is digital inequality, then the solution should be solving the issue of digital equality and not other solutions, right? Like, or other problems. Like, it should be focused solely on this issue. And I needed specific detail, and I didn't get it, that really showed what exactly is digital inequality, what exactly very specifically is happening. Like, is it that the internet cuts out a lot and so students aren't able to submit assignments, and so they're getting docked percentages on late stuff? Because I have a feeling, and I could be completely wrong here, but I have a feeling that professors are way more open to students turning in things late during the online semester. I've been specifically asked to be pastoral and to be okay with extending deadlines and being understanding of internet issues, especially with people living in smaller towns or villages, as y'all say. And so, like, how much is the grade worsening because learning online is hard, right? Like if we were in class, I would be able to teach you guys the information. I would be able to go over the stuff that we read in the book. If you didn't do the reading or if you didn't understand the reading, we'd be able to do activities in class. Right now, you guys are just required to listen to my video lectures and read and respond, and you don't have quite that as good of interaction. And so like, won't that also affect the grade? And so I had that major issue of like, is this correlation or causation? Okay. And if we don't know, what does that mean, right? Because we don't have to know if it's correlation or causation. Maybe we don't know, but if we don't know, then we can't say it is, right? It was asked to suggest the ways of minimizing the effect of digital inequality on the academic performance of NU students. I don't know who was asking. I don't know what is asking. I don't know if they're referencing a question that they asked. I don't know if the students were asking them or if they were asking the students. Okay, so just write sentences well there. And then this information is just too brief. Basically, this is where we go into the specifics of their solutions. And remember, so far in their report, I didn't hear about their solutions and the methods yet. So I actually, up until this point, don't really know any of their solutions yet, which is a major issue. And I'm a little bit uncertain of their problem at this point too, which is also a major problem, okay? Their decision matrix would get pretty low scores on design. If you look at how well it's designed, it just looks really bad. Way too much information here. And I don't mean to, like, this isn't done in a way to like put the students down at all. Okay, this is I think it's understandable that I'm trying to show you guys what to do here. And you know, like the title is the words of the title are good, okay, but the formatting here in APA style and then just good design practices are not implemented here. I would say too wordy here, and then just like huge open spaces. Like we don't need that much open spaces, all right? And so you need to find ways of designing. And I actually just barely spent probably about 5 minutes just trying out a different design. And again, I only spent 5 minutes on this, and so I'm not saying that this is, in fact, this isn't complete. But look at it already; it looks way better already, right? Maybe we want to make this line darker to show that these are the totals, right? We can make that area darker. Like, just think about, remember again the purpose of graphics. The purpose of graphics from our chapter is to make a lot of information and complicated data more easy to understand and more simple. And actually, this decision matrix was worse when I downloaded the report. I've actually fixed it a little bit. Even this part right here, it used to go onto this page as well. And if you have to scan through 2 pages and like all of this like actual paragraph information to like understand it, and then with all this extra space, like it just completely fails as a graphic, right? Remember, even though you're required to incorporate graphics because I told you to, you're also required to incorporate graphics that are necessary. If you have graphics in your report that are unnecessary, you will lose points, okay? Here you wrote solutions in the matrix are evaluated according to the ratings of students in the survey along with intuitive reasoning. Again, I heard a little bit in my head that students were saying, but not on secondary research, right? And maybe that's just because like I can't help but hear that, but like that's what I heard, and that's a massive issue, okay? That you just, no. For example, it is clear that living in a dormitory may pose more risks for student health rather than a change in course organization. I would say no, it's not clear, okay? I don't know what you mean. In what way is it dangerous? Are we talking about COVID-19? Is that what you're referring to? Because again, you didn't say anything about COVID-19 yet. At least in this, I don't mean in general, I just mean in this part, right? Or in this section, or in the, decision matrix or anything. And so like, be specific, be clear, all right? What are you supposed to do in the discussion section? In the first paragraph, you're going to answer your research question, and you might mention what your solution is that you picked briefly in kind of like the introductory paragraph of the discussion. In the discussion, you're going to mention broader implications, weaknesses of your research, future prospects. One of the most important sections in the discussion is going to be an analysis of your decision matrix, just so we understand why you got the score you got in your decision matrix, okay? I'm going to just go ahead and say that, well, let's read through this together, okay? Because I want you guys to understand this well. The results of the conducted survey suggest that digital inequality has a considerable negative impact on the academic performance of digitally underprivileged undergrads. Okay. Again, I'm not 100% certain what the research question is, so I'm not sure if this answers the research question. Digital inequality exists and matters, although the number of students is significantly less than those who have stable interconnection and working devices. So this is good, but I want more detail. Okay, I need way more specific detail. If you can provide it, or as much as you can provide. How many of our students are struggling here? This will help me understand the scope of your research. If you say 50%, then I'll be looking for bigger kind of like evidence. If you say 10%, I'll be looking for smaller amounts of evidence, right? It doesn't have to be that we're trying to solve the universe problems, right? Like it can be a small thing. It can be just like a minority group of people who need some help, okay? All right. And I'm kind of wondering here, what is digital inequality exactly? Like I know what it is generally, but like how is it how is it happening in NU and fall? Like again, I'm a little bit not sure of what specifically is going on, and showing that the problems that they're experiencing aren't because the school that aren't because we're doing university in a new way and there's a pandemic and everyone's stressed and everyone's depressed because they're not hanging out with other people. Like how do we know that it's digital inequality? And honestly, the big problem is I think they don't. Okay, that's the big problem, is that we don't know causation or correlation here. And so they have to really, really rethink a lot of their research at this point, or they have to find a way to incorporate a lot of good secondary research that solidifies everything they're saying and backs up everything they're saying. Okay. There's a high probability that organization of the educational process is not adapted for students who might have limited access to the internet. Okay. Good use of hedging, high probability that, okay, which prevents them from demonstrating their full potential. Good point. Okay, I agree. And this could be something that goes into broader implications possibly. The survey results also enable to underline. Okay, enable to underline, very awkward phrasing. So I'm not sure what that means. Basically, just the survey results showed that digital inequality arises mainly due to deficiency in information about the course and unexpected issues during using technologies, but not due to restriction on access to devices. So again, I'm not sure what deficiency in information means, because that I don't see how that is a digital inequality. And so maybe I need more explanation of that. Yeah. Okay. So again, it just not specific enough. Okay. What does that mean? Like, tell me very specifically. Nonetheless, courses should be adapted to prevent digital divide for people with limited access to gadgets too, because and then also I was wondering, now this is maybe something that they're not going to cover in their research, and if not, that's okay. But I'm kind of curious how many students use technology as an excuse each semester when it's a lie. I know that there might not be nothing we can do about that, but I know that students use this as a lie each semester because there are different ways that I can prove that it's a lie. For example, last semester, I had a student say, hey, sorry, internet, excuses, whatever. And again, I know that these internet issues do exist, so I'm not trying to trivialize that among students where this is an actual issue, but they use that as an excuse to tell me why they didn't turn in their reading posts part 2 and that they didn't know that they had to turn it in. Well, because Moodle will track what you do, I was able to look up and see that the student actually accessed this turn it in submission thing weeks before. Okay. And so I was able to show like, oh no, that this is like you were lying. Right. And so I want to make sure that we can give every student access to devices. And if that's a problem, like it should definitely be a solution. And I would actually go so far as to say that isn't NU already working on solving this, or haven't they already done something about this? For example, they tell me to make sure that if a student internet has issues, to allow an extension, right? I've been told that. I've been told that by my vice dean, right? I think I've heard of laptops being sent to students. Is that correct? So yeah, so it looks like what you've done with your research is a lot of very surface level basic stuff based off of just what you guys personally want, right? As well as a very maybe small population of students need, but without all of the secondary research here to support your evidence. Let's see, students with low digital access are put in disadvantaged positions since they are expected to show the same academic performance as those who are digitally privileged. Agreed. Okay, I agree. That is a problem. Now, this is where I actually got really excited. It says these two authors, you know, their study on digital inequality in rural and urban areas emphasized the dichotomy between educational experience and those who have access. I was like, oh my God, secondary research. Yes, thank God. Um, finally, but again, I want more detail. Okay. What does lower level access mean? I don't know what that means. And then this section I didn't even look at. This is the section that I would look at the most and most closely, but I see that they didn't cite a single thing, and that even this font is a different color, okay, and different, or not color, but different size and different font. And so it's just like, if they're not even showing me the proper font and size, you know, the rest is not going to be good there. So I didn't even look. Recommendation section is not done correctly. It's mostly correct, but we do want to format it in the exact same structure, formatting wise, as the textbook does, with like the, you know, we recommend, you know, colon option 1, or if there's only one option, just that option bolded so we can see it, and then a paragraph of explanation. And then that's it, just so that we can see that more clearly. Okay, we want to use better filtering techniques here. I know this video is going way long. Sorry, guys. This is not proper APA style, but it's close. And then we need an appendix, incorrect title. And like I said, they had a problem of giving me 2 different figure 1s. Okay, so that's an issue. Make sure that there is only one figure 1, okay? And that each one has a different name, figure 1 through whatever you have. But I'm glad that they included their aggregated data here. I haven't analyzed it. Again, I'm going to kind of end the video about right here just because I don't want it to be too long to where you guys can't even watch it. Please, 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 please avoid plagiarism. I do not want to give you a 0. Anything that is not your own words, cite it, okay? And in proper APA style. That doesn't mean that every sentence has to be cited, as long as you're doing it correctly, right? Just do it correctly like you learned in your previous classes. Let me know if you have questions. I mentioned the title page thing. Back matter, references, and appendix are required, okay? I need your aggregated primary research. If you are using sources that are in a different language, I need an appendix for every source that you use that's in a different language, and in each of those appendices, just a paragraph a paragraph where you summarize the text, a paragraph summary, okay, of every source that is in not in English, okay, and an appendix for each one. Let's see. I think that is everything. If you're using IEEE, you're going to have to make sure to do columns, and you're going to have to design your graphics. You might have to design your graphics directly in Word if they're not fitting in the 2-column format. If you design it in Word itself, it will likely fit better. Same with your decision matrix. You might want to make it a little bit longer and a little bit skinnier, kind of like what I've been doing with this one right here. But if it doesn't fit in the 2-column, if your decision matrix won't look good in the 2-column format, you're welcome to include it in the appendix. This is for IEEE people. You're welcome to include it in the appendix and it to be in like a full page appendix if you wanted to at the very, very end, like a full page appendix with the decision matrix there. It should still be designed well, but if you have tried for an hour or whatever and you cannot get it to fit in the 2-column format, you can move it back there. Try your best to fit it in the columns well, but if it's not going to work, then you can include it in the back. And just make sure that you guys are following the proper formatting guidelines for the graphics, okay? Again, check all of our documents online. If you have questions, check there first, check this video, past videos, check, sample texts. But if you can't find that information and you still need it, feel free to email me. I'll try to be available for a few hours on Saturday and Sunday. Deadline is still strict Sunday. No extension there, just because I'll only have a week to grade all of them. I think I've been pretty lenient on extensions of deadlines up until this point. And so, yeah, please just do me the same respect of turning it in on time, as now it's my turn to hurry and grade and get all of that feedback back to you guys quickly within a week. Yeah, I'll have to submit grades. And I'll send out an email once I have everything submitted, and you guys can check your grades. Yeah, all right, I think that's it. So make sure you put all of this time into the content. Okay, content is most important. Work on content as much as you can. Once you get that closer to being done, start working on the smaller stuff, formatting and language, grammar, looking at concision, making sure you're cutting out unnecessary phrasing and wording, but that you also include all of that detail that I really, really need, okay? And that you're clear and that you're using specific language, all right? Thanks, guys. I know that was a lot, but good luck. Hopefully that helps. And yeah, I think we'll end the video there.